What's up, everybody? Welcome to the program. Casey Hendrickson here in the Silver Fox Art Studios, silverfoxart.com studios, I should say. And probably going to be a quicker one today, running a little bit behind, doing taxes, had a business meeting earlier today, so do apologize about the tardiness of the live stream today. Was planning on getting here a lot earlier, but things happen. And, you know, as we get settled in, like I told you before, once we get through my schedule, that stuff that was pre-scheduled before I started doing the second show, then things should calm down a little bit. I wanted to go ahead and go over a couple of different things here. Actually, let me go ahead and shut down Telegram. Otherwise, those notifications are going to drive us absolutely bonkers. Okay. Once again, we have a situation where a parent has been directly quoting the content that was being given to their kid in school, and the school board shuts them down for being inappropriate. This has happened several times since people started going back to school with the pandemic, and parents started to realize what their kids were actually being taught. And every time this happens, basic simple logic comes out here, right? If it's not appropriate for a public forum and it's not appropriate to be on television, then it's not appropriate to be in the classroom. It really is that simple. There was a parents group several months back, who maybe a year ago, who took out an ad. They were going to run the ad after prime time, so it was going to be late at night. Kids weren't going to be watching it. And this was an ad that showed specifically what was in the content of some of these books and things like that they're talking about and complaining about in their local school system. The ad was rejected by the television channel because it was too graphic. And which the parent group knew exactly what was going to happen. They released it onto social media. But that's the thing. If it's too graphic to be on television late at night when kids are in bed and only adults are watching, if that is going to be too graphic and may potentially violate FCC standards, and if you can't quote this stuff in a school board meeting without the school board shutting you down because of decency standards, then it doesn't belong in the classroom. Really isn't that difficult. If it's something that can be shown to everybody, then it's probably okay for the classroom. If it is something that cannot be shown and is considered too obscene for the school board members to even hear, well, then it shouldn't be in the classroom. That's the thing. Reasonable people are all on board on this. Anybody disagrees with that, you're a lunatic. I don't know what else to say. But I wanted to go ahead and just cue up the audio here. I wanted to highlight all of this for you because I think you need to hear this. This is, again, just another example. I've played several of these on the show as much as I can. Usually they have to be edited, and the editing process is not always easy. I've quoted some of the materials that are here in our school systems here locally in Michiana, and made my producer very, very nervous when we were on the radio show doing that, because I had to clean up the language, because this is stuff that you cannot say on the radio without getting an FCC strike, which of course is a huge fine, potential loss of your broadcasting license, and you're out of a job. So this is in the Cherokee County School District. And the chairwoman had said that a parent was out of order for describing sexually obscene material that the district gives to students. So this is how this went down. This one is pretty mild compared to some of the other ones that I've seen. So if you got kids around, you'll probably be okay. Some of them were pretty graphic, but this one, it's kind of weird how this one actually happens. But I'm just giving you a content warning just in case you're at work. Throw on the earbuds or whatever. If you're at home and you got little kiddos running around, throw on the headphones, just so I don't get yelled at, all right? So I'm giving you a fair warning here. This is not something that I'll play on my radio show, but I think it's going to be okay for most of you. But it just depends on your circumstances, your situations, and the sensitivity of where you're at right now. But this is the video. I'm sorry it's a little quiet. Here's the excerpt right now. Okay, now, she only pulled a mild excerpt. And she even said, look, I'm going to be careful here because I don't want to get kicked out. So she gives a mild excerpt about what is happening, what is in that book. She's explaining the process of how these books are pulled and how throughout that process the book is still available for students. There's a child that is on that committee. The child says it's AP required reading, so I have to read it. If you pull it away, it's going to be a problem for my AP program. She gives the quote, even telling them, I'm going to do basically a mild one here. I'm going to be very careful. And relatively speaking, pretty mild. Still not appropriate for, obviously, most age groups in elementary school. But she continues, and this is where things get really interesting. Now she's back in the process. Now, she's done with the excerpt, and she goes back into the process of how this all works and the asinine process of removing this type of content from the schools. And that's when she gets interrupted, not during the actual excerpt, only after that. Oh. Oh. Yes. 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 Okay, so this is not appropriate. We've got children streaming at home. Yeah, that's the point that I'm making, you idiot. If you can't allow me to say this in a school board meeting when there's kids maybe streaming this at home, then it shouldn't be in the classroom. That is the entire point of what she's saying. And how many times have we seen this play out? Over and over and over and over again. I'm telling you, here's the thing. People who are psychopaths, it's the only way to really put it. If you are not embarrassed by being wrong, a lot of people in the news media and that sort of thing, if you're not embarrassed, you're a sociopath, not a psychopath. If you're not embarrassed about being wrong, if you're not embarrassed about highlighting your hypocrisy on the world stage, there is something wrong with you. Your medulla oblongata is jacked up. And if you've got multiple parents now just quoting the material that they're objecting to their kid being given in school, and you have school board after school board after school board, as we've been documenting for, well over 2 years now, that are saying, no, you can't say that here. That's inappropriate for this forum. What are you doing? This is very graphic language. Yeah, that's the point. The graphic language, the basic anime porn that is being given to kids in some of these school districts, this stuff is not okay for these age groups. I don't want it banned. I don't want it obviously removed from the bookshelves or anything like that. If you're of age, go read it. If you're underage and your parents say it's all right and your parents feel that it's relevant to your life and they can monitor your reading of that material, fine, let the parents be responsible for that. But it shouldn't be in the classroom. And this mom, just don't you see the irony in your behavior here? You're telling me it's inappropriate for the school board meeting because kids at home might see this if they're streaming on the internet. But you think it's okay to be in the classroom and given to students and to be available in the school library? That's the problem. And of course, they do not, because again, they're sociopaths. They do not catch their own hypocrisy. It is just simple. Parents are wrong. Parents have no place in education unless, of course, the student fails, and then it's all the parents' fault. And she gave a very, very mild example from that book. Sorry, I got the hiccups. Very mild example from that book. And she cleaned up her language because she was in a public forum. And because she did, even though she did that, it was still considered too inappropriate, even though she cleaned it up and picked a pretty mundane excerpt. But what would happen if she went up there and she was talking about some of the other things we've heard some of these parents say, where they give the slang term for various sexual acts and things like that, while specifically citing those sexual acts. And obviously, that stuff would be considered an FCC violation on television. Now, look, I'm in radio, and I know that we're doing the live stream here, and the internet is uncensored and all that stuff, but I'm in radio. And in radio, there are certain things we're not allowed to say on the air because it affects our public license, right? We use public airwaves. We have to go through the FCC. We have to be licensed through the FCC to use the public airwaves on that frequency. And if we violate that public trust, we lose our broadcasting license. We can be fined. And of course, if anybody's fined and you lose your broadcast license, boom, you're usually fired. So this is a very simple process for somebody like me. If I can't say it on my radio show, it doesn't belong in the classroom. Really that simple. It really is that simple. We're not talking about cable television type stuff. We're not talking about premium movie channel type stuff. We're talking about your simple, basic, free, over-the-airwave sort of frequencies for radio and television that have decency standards that they must meet by the federal government. And if I can't say it on my radio show, it doesn't belong in the classroom for children to see. It's not a hard concept. And that's all this mom was saying. Of course, it's inappropriate. We got kids at home streaming this. And that's just really, really... And yeah, that's my damn point, lady. That's my point. But it doesn't really matter. Now, I've told you the story here recently, and some of you who are not in this area, you probably don't know, but I've told you the story recently that one of my kids is in a particular school district here, and teachers in that school district at the middle school level, okay, middle school, we're not talking about high school, middle school, are posting on social media asking parents, hey, your kids are watching pornography. They're watching Pornhub in school, before school, in between classes, and sometimes in the class. And we have to tell students every single day to stop watching pornography in middle school. Now, these are teachers who have taken to social media to make this complaint. And the reason they're doing that is the school administration is not backing the teachers, and the school administration is not doing anything about it because it's about the almighty dollar, keeping that kid in the class. And, of course, there might be some demographically problematic situations that may show up depending on the schools. But these teachers are going on social media, and they're saying every day we have to tell multiple students to turn off Pornhub. Every day. In middle school. Now, that's a problem. Now, kids will be kids. I get it. Kids will look at that stuff and everything else. But we are talking about middle school students. But the other aspect of this that has me bothered is that the school itself doesn't do anything to discipline the students who are watching pornography in school. They don't notify the parents. They don't take away the cell phones. The kids aren't sent to the office. They're not disciplined in any way. There's no detention. There's no RPC. There's no suspension. There's nothing. The parents don't even know it's happening because the faculty doesn't tell the parents their kid is doing it. So that obviously is a big problem. You're not even giving parents an opportunity to correct the behavior. The other thing is why are middle school kids watching pornography? And guess what? There's a pretty darn good argument that when you start showing pictures of grown-up sexual acts to single-digit age children in elementary school, that maybe by the time they're in middle school, they're going to start watching that stuff. This is what we mean by grooming. You give them sexually explicit material at a younger and younger age, the more likely they are to seek out that material at a younger and younger age. And then we start running into whole other issues. Watching inappropriate material at a young age, the psychological damage. Billie Eilish is talking about that right now. She's not alone. This is the type of thing. I'm not against pornography. I'm not against adult material. If adults want to engage in that stuff, and by all means, most of you know my background with my ex and everything else, okay? It certainly doesn't bother me. But it does not belong with children. Extremely damaging with children. It's damaging for a lot of adults. It's certainly damaging for children. It's not up for debate, okay? So the younger you give children sexually explicit material, the younger they're going to seek out sexually explicit material. And we're seeing that in my school system, one of the school systems in this area, in middle school students, on not just an isolated single occurrence basis, but on a running systemic basis. This is something that they are dealing with all the time. And teachers are powerless. The administration won't back them up on it. The students are not disciplined. The parents are not made aware of it so the parents can discipline. Nothing is happening. Absolutely nothing is happening. And then when you have parents saying, hey, look, We think our kids might be starting to do all of this stuff because, well, you're giving them sexually graphic material at a very young age at school. Sometimes it's required assignments. Sometimes it's just in the library and they run across it. But regardless, this stuff doesn't belong in school. And you've just got all of these groomers out there going, no, we don't want to hear it. Sexual health and body empowerment and all of that stuff. No, that's not what it's about. And it also doesn't help when you have people like Ketanji Brown Jackson running out there and telling everybody that, yeah, child pornography sentencing is out of step and probably a little too strict, which she does. And here's the thing. 48 hours ago, this was considered a conspiracy theory to say that she had this position. Her entire judicial record is full of light sentences for child pornography. On my radio show, you have heard me talk about this for damn near 16 years. The judiciary in this country has a child predator problem. There's a lot of child predators in the judiciary, and they protect people who might be in their circle who come before them, and they rule against them. That's why you see so many light sentences. We've seen people not go to jail because they're too short, even though they're not a little person. They're just too short. And it might be dangerous. We've seen people go to jail for just a couple of months, even though they raped a couple of kids. We've seen a lot of very, very light sentences over the years that we've discussed on my show, and some of them have become national issues. And the result, the whole purpose behind that is because there's a lot of judges, there's a lot of lawyers who are involved in this circle, there's a lot of politicians who are involved in this circle, and they all protect each other. They're protecting their own camp. They're pedophiles, they're sexual predators, and they protect each other when they get caught. And that is a very, 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 very big problem. And so when I see somebody on the bench, forget the fact that she's hyper liberal and everything else. I don't really, okay, that's secondary, all right? This woman believes that the sentencing guidelines for child pornography are too strict. And 2 days ago, that was a right-wing conspiracy theory that she even held that position. The problem is that she actually said it. She said it, and then all of the people who called it a right-wing conspiracy 2 days ago now support that position. I'll cover that a lot more on the radio show today. I will play you her comments here in just a second. So we will play Ketanji Brown Jackson defending light sentencing on child pornography during the confirmation process while she is the Supreme Court nominee. Coming up in just a couple of minutes. Well, not a couple minutes, a minute. I've got to pay some bills first. SilverFoxArt.com. If you're looking for amazing wall art, whether it's a logo, whether it's a team logo, whether it is a family photo or a picture of a pet or what have you, and you just want it not on canvas, you want it on wood, you want it three-dimensional with RGB backlighting, this is the place to go. SilverFoxArt.com. Be back in a second. All right, so up for the Supreme Court nomination. Of course, they picked the most radical person you could possibly think of. I told you that was going to be the strategy. We knew it was going to be a black woman because Joe Biden had said that. More on that in a little bit. But we knew that they were going to pick the most radical left-wing judicial nominee they could think of, because they know that won't get through. And the whole point is to make this a political fight heading into the midterms so that the Democrats actually have something to run on, because right now they don't have anything to run on. The economy's not great. Inflation's out of control. Gas prices, foreign policy disaster after foreign policy disaster after foreign policy disaster under the Biden administration. The Democrats are not popular right now. There's really nothing for them to run on. You can't even scare people with COVID anymore, though they will try with this new OB1 variant of COVID. But it's not going to work out. People are rejecting this nonsense. And so what they have to do is they have to kind of create this political battle. And so the political battle originally was supposed to be about, hey, we could remake the court. The problem is that putting a leftist judge on the Supreme Court right now isn't going to change the demographics of the court. So they have to make it about the confirmation process. So you get the most extreme person who has no chance of getting through with Republicans. The Republicans will, of course, kill the nomination. And then you make the case to the American people that the Republicans are standing in the way of judicial appointments, which are his constitutional right, yada, yada, yada. And you just turn it into a whole political fight. But for me, it's not even that she's a radical left-wing activist, and she is. For me, Ketanji Brown Jackson's problem is her leniency with child predators. And here she is, okay, just 2 days ago, this is a right-wing conspiracy with no validity whatsoever. And here she is admitting it.
As you said, the guideline was based originally on a statutory scheme and on directives, specific directives by Congress at a time in which more serious child pornography offenders were identified based on the volume, based on the number of photographs that they received in the mail. And that made total sense before, when we didn't have the internet, when we didn't have distribution. But the way that the guideline is now structured, based on that set of circumstances, is leading to extreme disparities in the system, because it's so easy for people to get volumes of this kind of material now by computers. So it's not doing the work of differentiating who is a more serious offender.
Okay. By the way, I love that there are 666 replies to this. I love that. This is a great point. The sentences before the internet made porn readily accessible were very harsh, but now that porn is so readily available, it's wrong to punish people as hard as the old days. What? You know, what's interesting about this is that with every other circumstance out there, they take the opposite approach. And by they, I mean everybody. If guns are more readily available, then you increase the sentencing guidelines to still further dissuade people from illegally purchasing a firearm, right? Does it work? Not really. But that's the logic. So if child pornography is more readily available, then you have to create a greater barrier to disincentivize people from getting it, right? Which could be harsher sentencing. It's supposed to be a deterrent, right? Harsh sentencing is supposed to be a deterrent. Her logic is the exact opposite. Her logic is child pornography is so readily available right now. By the way, you have to go looking for child pornography. It's not something that just pops into your lap on a regular basis. There are message forums, you got darknet involved. There's all sorts of things that have to happen for you to seek it out online and be able to gain access to it. It's not like just hopping onto Google and going, oh, child pornography, yay, and then find it. It doesn't work that way. It's a crime. So it takes tremendous effort. Now, again, tremendous effort compared to just doing a normal internet search. I understand technology makes it much easier to find it, much easier to share it, especially in mass. I get that. So you should increase the penalties to disincentivize people from pursuing it. And her logic is, well, they have the ability to get more access to child pornography, to get more pictures, more videos of child pornography. And because they have this ability to get so much of it so easily, it doesn't make sense for us to punish them harshly. You realize the more photos and videos they have, that's the more a child has been victimized, right? So if anything, the sentencing should be harsher now than it was before, because we're dealing with more victims and we're dealing with more attacks on victims. Obviously, some of these kids are victimized multiple times. And her logic is to simply say, well, it's so readily available for somebody once they find it that, our sentencing guidelines are kind of out of touch. It's just bizarre behavior. And to watch members of the news media, again, I will talk about this today on the show, watch members of the news media who just a couple of days ago said this is a right-wing conspiracy, none of this is true about her. Now she admits it. They're all defending her, going, yeah, you know what, she's right, including Tubin, the guy who wanked himself in front of coworkers. I mean, it is obviously illogical. But I do find it interesting that she was able to give you that explanation, and obviously there was more to it. I could have gone on for the rest of the video. I don't need to. She was able to explain all of that, right? She's completely backwards and wrong, but at least with some clarity on what her position is. And she's able to argue these nuances and the histories of it and everything else. In her mind, this is a very complex issue, and she's able to argue it in a complex way, even though it's very simple. Every picture, every video is a child victimized. More pictures, more videos, more victims. More attacks, harsher penalty, which is what we do for everybody else. You kill one person, there's one penalty. You kill two, you get twice as much. But what I found interesting about this is that while she was able to argue this position from her demented, articulate perspective, she couldn't even define what a woman was. And she is somebody who is picked to be the Supreme Court nominee because of two things. Color of her skin, and that she's a woman. Yet she doesn't know what a woman is. She has no idea what one is. Yet that's half of the reason that she's even having this confirmation process right now. I'll play it again. Here we go.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
Why not?
I can't.
Why not?
You can't?
Why?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of
You're not a biologist, yet you can argue the intricacies of child pornography violations very, very easily. Interesting, don't you think? I can't tell you what a woman is, but I can sit here and argue about child pornography sentencing guidelines and the history of child pornography and access to child pornography and why those sentencing guidelines need to be changed. I just can't tell you what a woman is. Oh, by the way, I'm here. Half of the reason I'm here is because I'm a woman. Allegedly. Right. Anybody else have a problem with this? I know I'm not alone. I realize that there's a lot of you out there that have a problem with it, but sometimes just watching this play out using her own demented words against her is enough. And I just want to remind everybody that while Joe Biden is out there, I know you all know this, while Joe Biden was out there saying, we need a black woman on the Supreme Court, it's about time that we have a court that reflects the population. He's the guy that prevented a black woman from going to the Supreme Court twice.
But I have no intention of filibustering somebody. It depends on who the president sends. But I could see a circumstance. For example, if he set up Edith Jones, I can assure you that would be a very, very, very difficult fight, and she probably would be filibustered.
What about Janice Rogers Brown? Someone else?
Excuse me, I'm not. By the way, I misspoke. Janice Rogers Brown.
Yeah, because Edith Jones sounds like a black woman's name. That's why he was confused.
That's what I meant to say.
Oh, okay.
I misspoke.
But wasn't she just confirmed though? How do you invoke the extraordinary circumstances clause of the agreement of the Gang of 14 for somebody who's just been confirmed?
Because a circuit court of a judge is bound by stare decisis. They don't get to make new law. They have to abide by the, for example, she
So what
could
you're
not
saying is the Supreme Court's different than the appellate court.
Right,
Okay.
Totally different ballgame.
All right. So, and again, he did. He filibustered. He blocked her twice. So this is a guy who didn't care anything about a black woman being on the Supreme Court. And as I've said before, part of our modern day politics is that you can't let the other side do something that you've promised your base you would do, because you can't give them that win, even if they're doing what you want to be done. So if the goal is to have a black woman on the Supreme Court, forget about her ideology and everything else, it's just black woman on the Supreme Court because it's good for our base. You can't let the Republican Party do that, because then the Republican Party gets the win for putting a black woman on the Supreme Court. So he blocked it. Really that simple. Why do you think they went after Clarence Thomas so hard? They didn't want Republicans to get a win on putting a black man on the court. They didn't want that because that's something that they claim they own. And I don't use that word lightly. So now you got this, okay? This is interesting. Soviet-style surveillance at Connecticut University. All right, so in a statement issued by its Office of Equity and Inclusion, Central Connecticut State University established a new policy designating faculty, administrators, and nearly all other employees as, quote, mandated reporters. Now, in that capacity, they are required to report to this office any information that they come across pertaining to gender-based discrimination. Infractions indicative of such discrimination range from sexual misconduct, okay, interesting, jokes within an earshot of somebody, something that they may consider sexist, dating violence, domestic violence, stalking, etc. Those last three are obviously big deals. Nobody's saying otherwise. But it is interesting here. You know, they wrote here on front page, the statement establishing this policy raises more questions than it answers. First, the most obviously, it fails to include any definition of gender-based discrimination or any indication of its limits. Yeah, if you don't include a definition of gender-based discrimination, then couldn't it just be anything fluid like gender, right? And I just want to remind everybody that if you're Central Connecticut State University and you're going to have your entire faculty spying on the students and turning them into informants, and you want them to do that based on gender issues, shouldn't you provide a definition of what gender-based discrimination actually is? Maybe, except we can't even get this woman to define a woman. So maybe not. Who knows? She can't define a woman, yet the Central Connecticut State University expects its faculty to be able to identify gender-based discrimination, yet a woman can't even define a woman. How's that going to go? It's going to be a crap show. Everybody knows it. Let's talk about Nancy Pelosi. Speaking of crap shows, let's talk about Nancy Pelosi here. Pelosi's electric car windfall, and I've been talking about this quite some time. If you go back in time and you look at the ethanol gas scam, and ethanol gas is great for race cars, and it can be used as a fuel. It's very inefficient, okay? Creates horsepower, less efficient. It is what Hitler had to use when he ran out of real gasoline, okay? Ethanol is not good. It's just not a good fuel for efficiency's sake and mileage and that sort of stuff. And it's not cleaner anyway. We've been over this a million times in the past, but I digress. There's still some people out there who don't know a lot about it, and they think that ethanol is clean. So we're in the middle of an inflation crisis and high gas prices. The last time we were, they pushed hybrids and ethanol on everybody. And, of course, there's one company behind all of that the last time, and that was Archer Daniel Midland. Archer Daniel Midland basically controlled almost the entire supply of ethanol in the United States of America, which came from corn, not sugar cane. So he did that, and tons of politicians were pushing ethanol as a fuel alternative, and E85 and not biofuels, but these dual flex fuel vehicles and that sort of thing. You know, they all had investments in Archer Daniel Midland. So you got politicians who are investing in a company that was pushing ethanol, and so they were financially invested in making this company's dream of ethanol come true. Plus, on the backside of it with ethanol, you get to tickle the fancy of the farmers out there who farm corn, and you get to give them a kickback also. So you get where this turns into a giant money-making scam. It had nothing to do with the environment. It had nothing to do with reducing fuel costs, which it didn't. It had nothing to do with any of that. It was purely a money play. That's all it was. So now, you fast forward, hybrids have been a miserable failure as an invention, and we're going to push electric vehicles on people. We're going to push electric vehicles to an electrical grid that can't withstand electrical vehicles. We're going to move the electrical grid, which would be able to maybe handle some influx of electrical vehicles, into a new grid that can't handle that capacity at all and is less reliable and more expensive. And you start to ask some questions why. Now, yesterday I posted on social media that BlackRock is really pushing electric vehicles. Now, BlackRock is the most powerful company in the history of all humankind. And BlackRock also happens to have more energy investments than any other company on Earth. So when they push an electric vehicle, it's because an electric vehicle has to be charged. And when an electric vehicle is charged, it has to be hooked up to the electrical grid. And since BlackRock has more investments in the electrical grid than any other company in human history, you get where they're going to make their money. Right? Their EV stocks and EV investments, things like that doesn't mean anything. It's all about the power grid. That's where they're going to make their money. So Nancy Pelosi's husband, of course, the number of politicians who are invested in BlackRock is staggering, which is why Elizabeth Warren and others have told them that they're too big to fail. Okay, Nancy Pelosi's husband cashed in up to $5 million worth of Tesla stock last week as the speaker lobbied for legislation to give subsidies to the electric vehicle industry. Paul Pelosi exercised options to buy between $1 and $5 million in shares of the electric car maker on March 17th, according to disclosures filed with the House clerk. He purchased the option on December 22nd of 2020 at an overall contract value of between $500,000 and $1 million. Nancy Pelosi has since spearheaded legislation to give tens of billions of dollars to build electric charging stations across the country, where you will wait sometimes for an hour or more to charge your vehicle. Democrats are also pushing to give subsidies to consumers to buy electric cars. Now, most of those subsidies are going to union shops and not to anybody who wants to buy a Tesla. For example, your electric vehicle rebate right now, or your tax credit, whatever it is only for union, the United Auto Worker labor union made vehicles. You can't get that credit for Teslas. You can only get it for GM and Ford and that sort of thing. Can't get it for Teslas, can't get it for Toyota. They're not union shops. So it's not about you getting an electric vehicle. It's about you getting an electric vehicle, but the right one, which benefits our political allies, which donate to our campaigns. Get it? So it's not about the planet. It's about their power and money. Always. So anyway, this is, Nancy Pelosi. Yes, I know that everybody's told you this before. She defended insider trading, said it should be legal, that sort of stuff. So this has obviously been a big problem. But Tesla still remains the most popular electric vehicle because right now it's the best electric vehicle overall. Now, this is Nancy Pelosi's performance in stock investments, all right? Now, obviously, you look at this, it goes up and down, but up and down. That's what the market does. But you have to look at the aggregate here. In the aggregate, since January of 2019, she's done very, very well, okay? She's done pretty darn good for herself. And you can look at any one of these representatives or any of the senators that are out there. You can look at any of that. All you got to do is go to the website quiverquant.com. They've got all of this parsed out. So if I deselect Nancy Pelosi, there's nothing there. You click on Nancy Pelosi, boom. You get her investment history. And if you scroll down, you can actually see which stocks right here people are buying, okay? So you can go through, like Pelosi's been buying a lot of Disney and Amazon and Apple as of late, but you can go through here and you can see what the stock is right here on this side. You can see when the date it was disclosed at, who was responsible, was it a sale, was it a purchase, what was the dollar amount, that sort of thing. You can break all of that down. And you can even just go into the recent transactions here. This is what a lot of investment folks do. They look at the recent transactions and they figure out who's buying what. So Gottheimer is buying this, right? It's Microsoft. So he's buying all of these stocks. And if you start noticing a bunch of people are buying a certain stock and they're members of Congress, you should probably buy that stock. If a bunch of members of Congress are selling a particular stock, you should probably sell that stock because they always seem to be ahead of the trend, the vast majority of them anyway. So I would pay attention to that stuff. Quiverquant.com. That's Q. Quiverquant.com. This is free. You don't even need to sign in. It's all free. Okay? You can even make your own versions of this stuff if you want to. So, like if we wanted to take a look at, Nancy Pelosi versus, Adam Schiff. Okay, let's take a look at Adam Schiff. They're both in California. They're both idiots. How is Nancy Pelosi's portfolio versus Adam Pencilneck Schiff? Adam Schiff sucks at investing. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, boom. He sucks at it because Adam Schiff is terrible at everything that he does. But, you can start picking some other ones. Scott Peters. How about Scott Peters? Scott Peters doing pretty darn good for himself. Not too shabby, right? Let's pick a more contrasting one. How about Sarah Jacobs? She's purple. Sarah Jacobs doing pretty darn good in her investments. So you get the idea. You can go through all of this stuff, and you can start to see exactly kind of what's going on. Let's see, I'm in Indiana. So let's take a look at Jim Banks, okay, in Indiana. Jim Banks, he's starting to do okay. Not great, not super stellar. Don't know that I would look at all of that. I don't see Walorski on here. She's probably invested in mutual funds, that sort of thing. But you got Susan Brooks. Take a look at Susan Brooks. Susan Brooks she's rocking it, man. Whatever her investments are great. But see, now you can go down here and you can figure out everything that she has been doing, and you know exactly where you might want to be putting your money. So very interesting tool that is free for anybody to use. It is used by a lot of investors, quiverquant.com. But the only reason I bring that up is because you can take a look at what Nancy Pelosi is doing when her husband and her husband, runs one of these venture capital funds. When they go through and they are buying and selling stocks, and again, insider trading on a lot of this stuff. You can also take a look at government contracts, okay? So these are recent government contracts, and you can take a look at the last 90 days here, and you start to take a look at it. Orion production and operations contract, and again, that's for space and that sort of thing. So you can start getting, these are for vaccines for kids, okay? That's where that's all going. Vaccines for kids, development of domestic manufacturing of pandemic and influenza stuff. You look at the recent contracts here, you can start to take a look. So you got 18.3 million go to the Department of Health and Human Services. Okay, why? Vaccinations for adults. You got 44.5 million going to NASA for intelligence research and that sort of thing. All right. Department of Homeland Security got $162,000 for the Rio Grande Detention Center. The Environmental Protection Agency got $100,000 to deal with bats and that sort of stuff. So you can go through all of these contracts. You can figure out who's getting these recent government contracts. And you can track investments with government contracts. Get it? And it's all freely available to you, and it's already done. You don't have to do anything. Super, super easy. It can help you with your portfolio, but also help you track money in politics and why they're pushing certain agendas and pushing certain technologies that don't make any actual logical sense. Like electric vehicles on a mass scale in this country do not make sense. The power grid can't handle them. Moving away from power grid technology that can handle it to power grid technology that can't, like renewables or green energy, since oil is renewable, but it doesn't make any sense. So you have to ask yourself what's going on. There's got to be a money play in there, just like there was with ethanol and Archer Daniel Midland back in the Obama years. So pay very close attention to this stuff. Very, very close attention to this stuff, because they're not ever going to tell you that. And sneaky people like Nancy Pelosi, man, Skeletor and her husband, they love. By the way, why does her husband look like Harvey Weinstein? Skeletor, Harvey Weinstein. Anyway, like a slightly thinner version of Harvey Weinstein. Got to pay attention to this stuff. There's always a money angle. It's never about you. It's never about saving the planet. It's never about saving the polar bears or anything else. It is always about solidifying the political class's power base and making them more money. I got to roll. Got to prepare for the radio show starting at 3 o'clock Eastern time on 95.3 MNC. We will be, what is today? Today, Wednesday? Today is Wednesday. So today we're just doing 95.3 MNC. Tomorrow and Friday, I will be simulcasting on WOWO in Fort Wayne. So we'll have WOWO and also 95.3 MNC, both radio stations going at the exact same time on Thursday and Friday. Pat's having some time off, and he'll be back hopefully the following Monday. So it's all pre-planned. Everything's good for those of you in Fort Wayne. Pat's okay. Everything's fine. So make sure you come back, hit that subscribe button. rumble.com/Casey the host. If you're watching on my website, it's theburningtruth.us, where most of you watch. Go to rumble.com/Casey the host. And hopefully you'll come back here in an hour and a half for the afternoon live stream for the radio show. Until then, I will see you tomorrow.